Good morning, St. Maarten. What's up? What's cooking? Gonna have our Monday morning chat once again. What a week. What a week just passed. Had a wonderful Lions convention. I was able to put some of my knowledge back in play and teach some of the younger Lions in the movement various roles in leadership in the Regional Lions Leadership Institute. We had 24 graduates that graduated from the faculty, and now they go into their countries and they train their clubs to ensure that the service to mankind that we provide through love in our hearts for people can continue to flourish. Now, besides that, we had about 300 plus Lions that came to our shores from Tuesday, Wednesday last week until Saturday, Sunday, and we still have a few that decided to make a little vacation out of it on our island. So I'm happy for that because that brought some needed income into the sector, the hotel sector, taxis, restaurants. So that was also nice. But let me get into some business now, because today is going to be a very interesting program, a program with different angles of moving into and looking what really going on. I got a lot of people that called me and asked me what happened last week, Monday, why you wasn't there, are you sick? No, I had to teach at the faculty, the Lions faculty for the Leadership Institute from Sunday to Tuesday, and we start at 9 in the morning and we end around 5, 6 in the afternoon. So mentally I was tired, but I knew I couldn't make it for 9:30, so I decided to cancel. But also some other people called me and sent me some text and asked me, can you ask this or can you ask that, and tell me what's happening, here and there. So let's start off. What's happening with the pension raise? And when I say pension raise, that's what people consider AOV to be. But I need to make that correction because AOV is not a pension. A lot of people believe that AOV is a pension, but it's not a pension. And not everybody has a right to AOV in the sense of, okay, I live here 50 years, so I am going to automatically get AOV. That is correct. You're automatically, even if you lived 1 year in St. Maarten and you make 65, you have a right to request to get AOV. But AOV, the total AOV is 1,224 guilders, give and take. And that is if you lived 50 years on St. Maarten uninterrupted. Now that uninterrupted is where the confusion already starts. Because a lot of St. Maarteners leave St. Maarten to go and study. Now those that go and study in America, they remain with their years because they cannot write out from the census. But those of us that go to study in Curacao, Aruba, the Netherlands, we are obligated to write out. Which means if you go abroad for 10 years, you lose those 10 years. Now, why is it important that you don't lose them? AOV is a gift from government. Let me call it that. A gift from government to everybody on this island. Something that I want to discuss down the road, but at this point in time, I just needed to explain you what it was. They're giving this to you to help you make ends meet once you make 65 years. And this came from the old Netherlands Antilles. It was taken over but never adjusted so that it can help make you meet a livable wage instead of just giving you a maximum of 1,200 guilders when GB costs 500-600, food costs 500. Before you know, you can't even pay rent, you can't pay this. So it doesn't really help. And if you are a civil servant, and this is what a lot of people don't know, if you are a civil servant and your pension is higher than AOV, you get nothing. And if your pension is, for example, 800 guilders and you lived here for 50 years working for government, you will get 400 guilders. So they'll bring you up to a maximum of the 1,224 guilders. Yet there seems to be some discrepancies with this when it comes to people that get pensions as teachers, but we'll deal with that at a later stage. So my question now, or the question that the people were asking is, when is the promised raise coming? They were promised a raise last year. We are now 5 months further, and that raise didn't come yet. Now, I want to believe this was a raise that had to do with cost of living, etc., but maybe the minister can explain it so that the people understand if they're getting a raise or if they're not getting a raise, because in accordance to them, nothing has changed on their pay slip at the bank. Another thing that I got was GB. A lot of people pay for a deposit for water meter, electrical meter. They go and change the name, or they go and close the account. And they were told by GB last year, we are not ready yet to give back deposits. I found that strange when she told it to me. But when she showed it to me, it was a different story. You understand? They were able to show that they were told, you have to wait. This was 2022. We are now in May 2023. The people still haven't gotten their deposit. When this affects a senior, it gets my attention right away. I am the voice of the seniors. I have taken on that role now all the way. I am going to listen to them. I'm going to bring it to the forefront, and I'm going to follow up on it until it's solved. Now, I know the people in GB, and I'm going to give them a call after this show. But I intentionally putting it out because if there are more people that are suffering this same issue, let me know. Give me your name. I'm going to give your name to GB so that they can sort it out and settle the account with you. If you had a meter, you closed your meter, you had no outstandings, then you are rightfully entitled to your deposit that you paid on that meter. So I hope this is done and the people will get their money back. I liked the personalization of helmets that the French government did with the Riders Association on the French side, where they personalized the helmets, and they're going to be doing this until June of this year. I hope that on the Dutch side, we also can maybe tag along and do this nice program, because I think, one, it enhances road safety because people will have on a helmet and it's personalized the way they like it. You know, a lot of youngsters drive scooters recklessly. That's one thing already. But they don't even have on a helmet. So 9 out of 10 times when they fall, they sustain serious injury. The bottom line is we are paying for injuries that are not needed. Protect yourself, protect your health, because, you know, if you get an accident and you die, that's one thing. People will mourn the loss, but they move on in life. But if you get paralyzed for the rest of your life, you need a caretaker. And that is unfortunate because other people's lives change drastically because of your reckless behavior. And parallelism normally comes because of neck injuries or back injuries. So a neck injury can be protected if you have on a helmet. So please consider it, and let's see what we can do to prevent accidents that have serious consequences, because accidents will happen, but the consequences, sometimes we can work and maintain them. So what's the problem with the single use plastic bags, the plastic straws, and the styrofoam law? This law was passed, went up for ratification by government, and up until today, the law is not in effect. And then MP Westcott rightfully says, the Minister of TIAT came out, yeah, I'm going to check it by the entry points. And really? I don't understand the rationale. You have open borders with the French side. So what are you talking about? Things come in here, and customs, they basically look for two things: drugs and weapons, and people, because sometimes they hide people in containers too. But styrofoam isn't so. You really, why not pass the law? And if you see it in restaurants, if you see it being served someplace, find the people. That's why you have an inspection department for, sir. Pass the law. We make ourselves look like the fools of the Caribbean once again. We go through a law for years. And when it needs the signature, we come up with some Nancy story about we can check it by the port of entry. Are you serious, sir? But then again, let me leave that for what it is. Thank God, that Coho law found itself in the famous Dutch museums are failures. Coho was a failure from day one. Coho will go down as one of the biggest failures in Dutch political history when it comes to the Dutch Caribbean. But I'm happy that at least it made it to the museum shelves. Now, we have to make sure that certain articles in the Charter are also removed, and in the St. Maarten Constitution are also removed before those make it to the Museum of Failures. Because we have a charter that does not function, and we have a constitution that doesn't understand the country. I hope we do something about it sooner than later, even though I'm very nervous because the silence in this country on certain matters is deafening. Yet we talk a nice talk. Food security on St. Maarten. This is one of the themes that, because elections are coming, it's going to become the theme nearly. We're going to talk about agriculture, and we're going to talk about fisheries, and we're going to talk about food sustainability, but yet we do absolutely nothing. The government cannot show a program until this day. They're going on 4 years now. So yes, they're the longest serving government. So show a program, show some kind of progress when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to food sustainability. What the University of St. Maarten did, you all can't seek no kind of credit for it. None. That's the university. They brought in people. They said, let's get stakeholders like Mr. Dionisio Wyatt. Let's get, there was another research. I want to pull up his name fast here because I think he deserves the same credit as Dionisio is getting for this. But basically, what it was, and I know it's Mr. Hawley, Josiah Hawley. On Saturday last, these two gentlemen, together with the researchers and the students and local food producers and the community at large, got engaged in an information sharing discussion and exchange. And remember that since COVID's outbreak, the University of St. Maarten has been busy looking at this. They have these monthly discussions at Axum Cafe very often where they discuss how we can fix food sustainability in St. Maarten. And a lot of us talk a talk, but we don't do much. Now, I am not going to say, oh, I have done so much, but I'll tell you one thing. What I try to do is support the local farmers as much as I can. I prefer to buy from them what I can. My son has a restaurant and we try to buy as much as we can from the locals. People start to laugh and say, oh, you're just saying that now. Go and ask them. Go and ask them. We do that. At least we try to help where we can help. Not telling you we are the solution, but if we would buy up more from the locals instead of buying maybe a cheaper product that came in from abroad, sustainability becomes a reality. You got to do a little more though than just talk about it. So I was happy with what happened at the discussions because remember, food security and economic diversification was the last research they did for Curaçao, Aruba, and St. Maarten. And they came here and they discussed it. And with Dionisio and Josiah, they are trying to look forward. But there are more of them. There are more farmers. I hope Ras Bushman and, Sola get involved. And that's the Maarten Fisheries and Farmeries, I believe their business name is. I hope that we can get all the people on board, Jocelyn Richardson, get all these people on board and come with something sustainable. But for this to happen, we need money also. We might need a grant to get this really off the ground. Now, in Bonaire, Q Credits joined forces with the government to push agriculture, move it forward. So my question is, Can we do that here? We had programs lined up to help young entrepreneurs, but the bulk of the money has still not been used. So maybe, just maybe, the NIPB/World Bank can make a change in that policy and say, okay, you know what? Let us take some of the money and put it towards the development, not redevelopment, the development of agriculture and fisheries in St. Maarten. Let us work along with the University of St. Maarten. Let's see if we can get a collaboration with the University of Wageningen, who is right now doing a lot of work in Aruba, Bonaire, Curaçao, Saba, and Statia when it comes to agriculture, but also when it comes to renewable energy. And we just signed that also. But we signed that in the context of the development goals, the SDGs for 2030. And I'm going to discuss that a little later, but I need to put everything in one so we understand it better. We need to do more with agriculture, but not only just by planting. We need to do it on a scale that the country can handle a pandemic. Hurricanes, you might have losses, but hurricanes are so pointed that if St. Maarten get hit, St. Kitts might not have been hit, or Dominica might not have been hit, or Santo Domingo might not have been hit, or Grenada or St. Lucia. So you can import. But pandemics, those go across the board and they hit the various chains of distribution. And that's when food sustainability can become a very serious issue. So the concept behind what the university is doing is trying to see how the economic diversification will also slide in nicely in the whole agriculture atmosphere. I unfortunately couldn't make it because I would have loved to throw the weed factor in it and see how that would have also created the financial platform that is needed, because we need it. And a lot of people saying, oh, you keep talking about weed and weed this. St. Kitts just did it. Maybe everybody in St. Kitts crazy. Tortola did it. Maybe everybody crazy there. Or maybe we just too stupid in St. Maarten sometimes to see it right in front of our nose. But because we have ulterior motives for saying no, we say no. Not because it might be good for the country, because they're still smoking it right now. Like it or not. The difference is they're doing it illegal, so we need to create more jail space to lock them up and destroy their futures. Think about it. Honestly, think about it. Because we said too many things that we don't understand what they mean for us. And that is what we need to change. They stated clearly on Saturday, we speak of food security when everyone always, and that's the word in here, always has access to affordable, sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. That is something we cannot guarantee in this country. Let nobody fool you. We cannot. Because we are dependent on import. And when you are dependent on a third party, no matter how much money you have, sometimes you just simply ain't getting it. Because they need it to feed their own people. And this is the boat that we always miss. And then you see everybody come off their high horse. Oh no, man, we're going to take care of people. We're going to have food here. We got nonsense. We have seen it. Go today in the stores, and certain products that we used to have on the shelves are there no more. They're not there anymore. Simple things are not there anymore. Spam used to cost a few guilders. Today it costs 9 guilders a pan. I used to love spam, but I stopped eating spam. At 9 guilders a can. It's crazy. Milk used to be 35, 40 guilders for a big jar powdered milk. Today it's 50, 60 guilders. Dog food, 100, 150 guilders a bag. Do you understand why animals are roaming the street and people are putting the dogs beside the binsters or leaving them on the beach? Because they can't afford to feed them no more. No matter how much they love them, they can't afford it more. They have to feed their children and wives before they feed their animals. That's their policy. But it is the reality of what we are living in right now. And we gotta learn to come to grips with that. And that's why food security, sustainable food security, is so important. And I have had these discussions with a few people where sometimes we differ, but I do respect their position. People like Marie-Louise Boseman, Denise White, I butt head with them sometimes, but I respect them for their position because they have tried through thick and thin to really get all the people on board. But very often, because of the differences of philosophies, are just plain out, I don't want to work with that person, we don't get things off the ground. And that's very, very unfortunate. But it is what it is. But you must always remember that there's a major risk to food security. There's always a major risk to it. But if we do it right, it can provide us with the opportunities to rethink our economic and food system strategies. We can set the path going forward. We can. But we have to do it in such a way that all stakeholders are involved and not just a few stakeholders. We must all. We have to own. We have to take ownership of this. If we take ownership of this, I firmly believe that we can have something good moving forward. But we need to take ownership. We can't just throw it off as, okay, somebody gonna do it. No, we have to do it. Not somebody, we. Because somebody becomes nobody. That's our problem here in this country. We don't like to dirty our hands, roll up our sleeves, and do it ourselves. You see, this is when you work in a department like Public Works, for example, where I came from, where when there's a hurricane, you become creative how you're going to solve the problem because you need to solve it. You cannot say, well, we're going to leave the water keep flooding people's homes because we know or we ain't got this and we ain't got that. No, you can find a solution. Divert the water somewhere or the other. Dig a new trench. Do something. But you don't do nothing. It's the same with our country. We whine about a lot of things, but we really don't do nothing to fix that. And that has to change. And that goes for everybody, including myself. The problem is we talk more about it than we do more about it. A great example is the single-use plastic ban. This thing was approved. This thing should be implemented and the inspection should go out and control instead of coming up with some Nancy story. Now we're going to do it by the port of entry. This is a joke. It's truly a joke. But this is the problem we suffer here. And it will not get better. Believe you me, it will not get better if we don't do different. We really need to do different. Now, they're going to IPKO this week. I honestly hope in December 2021, just before I was sentenced, I was in the Netherlands and I spoke to Wageningen. I had requested that we have a meeting with the University of Wageningen, and we had one with the Maarten delegation that was there. And we had a great exchange of ideas, and we even got a directive how to move forward, how to get them involved, how to get funding from the second chamber's budget to get them into St. Maarten to help us with agriculture, even salt water based agriculture, and we have a sea around the whole island. So you see, there are possibilities. I was suspended in January the year after, and I haven't heard anything or seen anything anymore. And that's unfortunate. But again, Wageningen is working in all the other 5 former Netherlands Antilles islands, except for St. Maarten. And you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why we again? That's the unfortunate part. Now, let me touch a subject that when I give off just the first heading, people say, oh God, where you going with this one? Prosecutorial Misconduct Unit. You see, we have a lot of investigations that take place on this island. And rightfully so. There's a right by the prosecutor's office to investigate people. And if need be, even arrest them. And then the system with judges of instruction, etc., kick in. But it's also a way of not doing it. Now, when a police officer does something wrong, it is the same prosecutor's office that jumps up and says, we're going to make him a suspect, or we're going to follow him for this and for that and for that. So what happens when they make a mistake? I'll tell you what happens. Not a damn thing. Nothing happens. St. Maarten has had its share of prosecutors that broke the law. From driving drunk and knocking down people to putting dope in the back of their trunk so they could have sex with a man's wife. All of these things happened here in St. Maarten. Let us not pretend it didn't. We have prosecutors that told people to make certain statements so they could nail people. And when they get catch, they put them on a plane and send them back to Holland. And there they continue their life. We need in St. Maarten, for my part, in the common courts, we need a prosecutorial misconduct unit. And it is not to be headed by their colleagues. Because that was the same problem we had in the police station. Police does something wrong, it's sent to internal affairs. The same colleagues that they work with every day, play ball with, have drinks with, and then they got to decide if they did it right or wrong. And then we go, oh yeah, but they have integrity. Please, we are human beings. Please, let's not go there. We know better, let's do better. And this is not that you get, oh, I want to attack the public prosecutor's office. No, I want to guide them because they constantly speak about transparency and integrity and crime doesn't pay. But why does it pay by you all? Because you all commit crimes in the way you do things. You cannot break the law and say you're doing it for the betterment of the country, because then you're a criminal just like the drug dealer is. Because he broke the law to enhance this country, brought more money into the country. So again, I need you all to understand how I look at certain things sometimes. And people say, yeah boy, you know, you're putting yourself in problems. No, I am not. Mistakes can be made. I have no issue with a mistake being made. But when power is abused, that's not a mistake. That's abuse of power. And that must be able to be dealt with. And not only in a court of law that your case becomes inadmissible. That's nonsense. That's the height of BS. If they break the law, they should be dealt with accordingly. That's justice. Not that the judge says, oh, well, you know, they behave so bad, we're going to dismiss the case. No. We're going to do it again, and again, and again, and again. And we paying for it. We paying for that behavior. But we are such cowards in this country that we will not stand up against that behavior because we are afraid that we will be prosecuted and locked up. If that's your fear, then you better get accustomed to a dog coat, because that's where you're going to spend the rest of your life. Locked up in your house with fear. We need to be able to speak out. We need to be able to call them out on these things. And if they feel that I am a threat to them and they got to get rid of me, I am for the challenge, brothers. Never had fear, not planning to get it now. You see, we need to understand that in some of these investigations, the manner they go after evidence is not allowed by law. They know that. But because we don't object to what they do and how they do it, they do it. And that's dangerous. Because you also have judges of instruction that are there. And they go along sometimes with these things. And I know when I was new in Parliament back in February, March 2020, we started kicking up against the new draft criminal code that they presented, where basically the prosecutorial arm was getting so much power that a suspect didn't stand a chance in hell to be acquitted. That's dangerous, because then you're going from a democratic situation to a police state situation. Thank God, the Parliament of 2020-2021 sent that draft criminal code packing. It was reviewed, it was seriously amended, and it's by the Minister of Justice now for signature to put in. And I know many of them in the prosecutorial branch do not like what's on paper. But you know what? You're not the legislator. You're the executioner of the legislation. And Trias Politicas made that very clear, but some people don't agree with it. So they still do what they want. They believe that they are the law. Not that they are the enforcer of the law. No, they are the law. They make the rules. And we sit by as idiots and allow this. There comes a time in a man or woman's life that we say enough is enough. I have said it a long time. I sat in a court case and I saw a judge fabricate a statement and then accuse the person and say, yes, you said it. And then told me, don't worry, it wasn't your statement, so it can't be used against you. I was crucified with that statement, and that's why I am suspended. Because it was a statement where he said he heard somebody say they give me 188,000 guilders. And that person last month told the judge, that's a blatant lie, I never said it, and you all know that well. Because my lawyer even wrote to the judge, and the judge agreed that the statement was wrong, and he was going to correct it. 2 days later, we went to trial. He didn't correct nothing. And he used that to crucify me. So yes, that's the justice we have here. That's the justice I'm living with right now. Am I mad? Yeah. Am I going to fix it? Yeah. It's an appellate court. I still believe in justice. But we must have a place to go when these things happen. We cannot just be sitting down and hoping something happens. No, we should be able to go to an independent entity and show the evidence of what's happening so that it cannot continue. But we don't have it at this point in time. But again, it's not only my case. There are cases in Holland right now, a few of them, where the prosecutor has been clobbered by judges also, telling them that this nonsense is to stop. You gathering evidence illegally, you listening and reading client, lawyer, emails, phone calls. That's privileged. You can't do that. Yet they do it. Yet they do it. They do it every day. They were accused of using certain spyware, Pegasus. You all remember that one? You see how it gone dead. Nobody talking about it anymore. They were deeply involved. They were deeply involved. This is dangerous. And I agree. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do when you're dealing with terrorism and when you're dealing with serious threats to the nation's safety. But don't come down here pretend that little politicians are serious threats to the nation's safety when the nation isn't even controlled by the politicians, but by you. You have the governor there that signs off on everything. Lately, that ain't happening. Why? But we can get to that just now. So you see, when we play this game of cat and mouse, there are more people that play the game too. And then it becomes dangerous. Remember in Holland that the Rutte 3 government fell because of the tax case. You remember when the tax department said, but you can't prosecute us for discriminating 30,000 families where people committed suicide and all kind of things. We are the state, and the state is above the law. You know that. Read the Dutch constitution. The state cannot be prosecuted. When you hear these type of things, you start to wonder, where am I going? when you see certain things happen, you wonder what kind of justice do we truly have? Are we equal human beings, or are we equal based on how much we own and what we own? So equality by means of equity, because that's how they treat us. Because if we were equal, there were certain things that could have been dealt with right away, like the regulation of dispute, the dispute regulation. But the reason they are not accepting a binding independent decision is because there's no way in their mind that 300,000 people in the Dutch Caribbean is going to tell 18 million Dutch people in the Netherlands that they're wrong. But we're equal. So you see, we got a lot of things to think about when we talk about these things. The last blunder they have right now is the article in the Telegraph, where the Bar Association of the lawyers have told the prosecutors that the way they are dealing with Crown witness statements is absurd. They pick what they need to come and prosecute you with a Crown witness, but they forget to give you the rest of the statement that will most probably have exonerated the suspect. But we call it justice. Let's move on. Undocumented school children. Now, many years ago, Maarten proudly introduced the compulsory education law for the island. But clearly, many aspects of the law weren't really reviewed enough, causing today that we have big problems with undocumented children in our school. This is a problem that we have in our schools for quite a while already, but this problem also has very serious consequences for the school system, our social system, and the country in general. To my understanding, presently, a school may not report a child to the competent authorities if he's illegal. So the child goes to school, his status, legal or illegal, is not relevant, and they will not report it. This brings with it, naturally, that the government, who subsidize majority of the schools, is subsidizing and promoting undocumented children on this island. While you look at it from the human rights aspect, every child has a right to education. You also have to look at it from the immigration standpoint, that if you're not documented, you cannot be in the country. And yes, there will be exceptions to the rule, because there are countries that are at war, there are countries that have been devastated by earthquakes or hurricanes, and their economies are in shambles and they cannot help their own people. You will not want to take a child or a mother and a child and send them back to that country. That is inhumane. And I understand that, and I don't have a big issue with that. I can live with that for a duration of time until the country gets better and they are repatriated or they fix their legal status. I think the Minister of Justice has opened the door somewhat that they were trying to work on this. It is not a Brooks Tower affair again, but it is a way where we're trying to regulate what's happening, because there are laws that say you may not split up a family. Very often people come here to work for 3 years, they get a 3-year work permit, and after the first year, most probably their wife joins them and their kids join them under the auspices of you can't divide a family, and they can support their family here. Now, I am not going to delve into the law because I'm not versed 100% in that aspect of the law. But the undocumented children is a problem, because if their father is working, they're insured automatically, because that's what the law says. The SFV law says that the family is insured, not just the worker. The worker and his family is insured. So now we are also medically insuring undocumented persons. You see how big this circle of deceit is becoming? SFV has over 3,000 undocumented people insured. One in the family is paying premium. Most of the time, these people are not the highest paid employees. most of these people are on the lower edge of the wage scale, the minimum wage era, of which 53% of this country earns. And while they don't pay taxes, they do pay premiums, but their premiums are quite low because of their salary, which means that the country is going to take a beating if we don't regulate the undocumented correctly. Now again, because these are school children, I want to be very cautious in how we do things. Not talking about let's go round up everybody and throw them off the island. But in Curacao, they just went through the reports. It's over 1,600 undocumented children in the schools. And by them, they are now looking for a solution, how they're going to repatriate these children back to their country with their parents, or if they can create a legal basis for them to be in the country. Because there's a problem. There are 1,600 plus children in the Curacao schools that are undocumented. Again, we need to ask ourselves one simple question. What are we going to do? Once again, as this is not a new something. This isn't something that happened under the watch of the Minister of Education in this term. This has been ongoing for years. For years. Since compulsory education started, they are having this problem in our schools. And that's about 20 years now already. So please, we need to deal with it. But are we going to leave it and hope that Holland solves it for us by means of an instruction for us to have to do this to get that? You see, I hope we don't do that, because we need to start doing things for ourselves instead of sitting on our hands and say we can't do it. The border demarcation. Now, I read the newspaper article and I smiled. I'll say that much. I smiled. And sometimes when I sat with people in the know, we started to laugh a little bit. Because it was a very proud moment for both sides that the final, let me put it so, the final border demarcation has been done until we find another problem and we start another fretting. And the Dutch side got 7,000 plus square meters. Yeah, that's it. We got 7,000 plus square meters. But what did we lose? Well, I'll tell you what we lost. We lost a lot. We lost economic power. We lost the water in the Oyster Pond Bay. We lost the entrance partially to the Oyster Pond, because I think the pond is now 50-50. So water rights that we used to seemingly give off in the Oyster Pond area is now going to become a French matter. The whole hotel, Captain Oliver's, the restaurants, that marina and so, will now become a French something. So there will be development there. So yeah, they got that. We got a few meters alongside the roads in various areas. We can't build on it, because 7,000 square meters is in reality 2-3 meters alongside 2 kilometers. If you take borders in Bethlehem, if you take the border down by Puerto Coy and all them, and they give you 2 meters or 3 meters on the side, you don't really get nothing, you know. Yes, you get some land to put on some coconut trees or some billboards, whatever they want to do. But you didn't get land to develop. We gave that up in Oyster Pond. So yeah, we have hopefully a final border demarcation, but we lost significantly when we did it. Now let me go over to a topic that I know is going to raise some red flags when I'm done. The old government building demolition. I addressed this matter last week, Tuesday evening, and some people asked me, where did I get my information from? I said Facebook. I believe everybody has now seen that picture on Facebook of a copybook opened, and all the names written of the contractors that gave a price at a meeting in June 2022. And one was disqualified, I believe, or not accepted, sorry. And the 7 other prices were there. And then there was a text about now you all can go and fight for your work. And then there was something said paid in full, a stamp. You have to learn to read what's written there. For me, it was kind of strange when I saw it the first time. And I said, is this true or not? So I made a few phone calls during the week that passed. And I spoke to some contractors and I said, this thing here, because I sent them it. I said, is this true? And they said, yes, it is. It's the height of craziness. And I smiled. Look, there's a bid for 660,000 guilders. The highest bid out of all the prices submitted. Now, you have in there 80,000 guilders they're saying is contingency, which would make the work bid about 580. So, again, I would assume everybody else would have had the contingency in there because either the request for proposal, because this is what it was. This was not a tender. People make this mistake that if 8 people are invited, it's a public tender. Absolutely not. It's a tender upon invitation. It's not public. Because public means anybody can give a price. The government said, listen, we believe these 8 companies are capable. Listen carefully to me now. The government believed that these 8 companies were capable of doing this job. And it is for that reason and that reason only that they were invited. Now, I don't want to be difficult, but the prices range from 260 from the young man on Front Street, Rising Sun, to 660 for the young man from Simpson Bay, I think it's Harley. The price comparison there is about 400,000 difference between the highest and the lowest. 400,000. Government must have made a calculation. They must have. So here comes the critical question. There was a company in there, Payne Construction, that took down the whole post office. He was at 4 something. You want to tell me he did a great job in calculating the post office, but he couldn't calculate the government building? Then you have Winter Roads in there for 460. You want to tell me Winter Roads doesn't know how to calculate demolition? Then you had CGC in there for 4 something. Lower yet. Listen, these are companies that can do these things. Winter Roads, for God's sake, knocked down Great Bay Hotel. I'm not trying to promote them. I'm trying to show the issue that is arising of what's written on paper. Now, mind you, it doesn't stop there. It really doesn't stop there. Because how was this work approved? These prices are from June 2022, nearly a year ago. So there is no urgency. You cannot write a national decree now and say, oh God, hurricane season coming, it's no urgency. No, that stupidity can't work. And the governor, in his right mind, can't sign that. So again, is this one of these works where there's no national decree? Because again, this is not in compliance with Article 47 of the financial supervision. Any project over 150,000 guilders must be tendered. And after that, is sent with a national decree to the governor for signature. Now, it can occur that you have an emergency and you rush. Like when we had a hurricane, you had to clean up. So you rush to clean up. The cleanup is more than 150,000 guilders. You prepare your bills and you send that to the governor with an advice, with a national decree for approval for payment. What happened here? Because that's not clear. What happened here? And the minister can go and put up all the big tents and have all the parties. That ain't going to change my attention span. That is not going to mean they're going to stop talking about it and asking questions, critical questions. Nothing against the contractor that won. But it is this minister that has accused everybody of not knowing what they're doing and did everything wrong. And here, blunder after blunder, fraud after fraud is happening. And the question is, why is nobody saying nothing? I would love to be corrected and said, no, the law said we don't need this, we don't need that, we don't need that, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. Because it then means that the former governor, Dr. Eugene Holiday, did it wrong for 12 years. I need them to say that. I need them to come out and say that. Staying quiet ain't gonna solve it. The ostrich policy of sticking your head in the sand and hope it blow past? No, it ain't gonna blow past. It ain't gonna blow past. So prepare yourself, because something ain't kosher. And then I saw a comment on Facebook that caught my attention. I said, you know what? This makes sense. 3 years ago in the Larimar case, there was a verdict where one of the companies that bid it was punished with a fine of, I believe, 2 million. And that was going to do sewage works and so. Well, there's water still. The shit water running there every day. Nothing has been solved. We put in a little something there in Foga. The works on the pond field didn't happen. The works on 88 Road didn't happen. So maybe you could take some of this money and you could have done that work for the 400,000 instead of the 660, to save yourself 260,000 dollars, which we could have then used to fix some roads instead of hoping to get a capital loan to go do something because elections come in. See, this is how it's going to work. Exposure time. The people in Maarten have a right to know what you are doing and how you are doing it. And if those in power want to protect you, God be with them. Because exposure is for all then. Some people might get upset with me. Some people might believe that I got something against them personally. I got nothing against nobody personally. But just like how all I used to tell me, when you're dealing with public money, be prepared for the public questioning you. I am public too. Not because I'm a suspended MP means I'm not public. I am public too. I pay taxes too. So I can ask questions too. But I ask questions with a little more information so that the question becomes a little more ticklish and a little more dangerous for you all to answer. But again, we're going to see what's really happening. Because some time ago they said, oh, how I tried to block all people that had a conviction from getting work. I was able to clear that air. Hopefully now they will clear this air by showing what they did transparently. Because the Ombudsman has stated it clearly in her report that the garbage collection was not done transparent and there was fraud. I was amazed that when a High Council makes such a public statement, that the public prosecutor remained dormant. Or are they going to kick in the door 2 months before election to tarnish the person and the party? And hopefully, push the election in a direction. Because that's what they do. They did it with Franz Richardson and the USP. They arrested Franz 2-3 weeks before election. And they knew it would shift things. They did it with Christopher Emmanuel. Tarnished him in October 2019. So he couldn't become a minister. They walked into his house now and I told it to him point blank. You made the worst statement that you should have made. I want to be prime minister. The minute they heard that, they said, not he. So what are we going to do? We're going to start something. Drop an investigation, do something. he can't pass screening. Unless the government decides to scrap screening. Because that's a possibility too. And keep the public prosecutor out of the governing system. So if you paid up your taxes, you're good to go. Because you're innocent until proven guilty. And not the other way around. Because that's the way they decide who becomes a minister and who doesn't become a minister. So yeah, how are we going to do this? You know, there are laws, there are policies, there are procedures that explain you how tenders are done. Remember the minister once came and said, oh, there's nothing there, I had to write it. He wrote it. What he wrote is not what he just did. What he just did is totally different than what he wrote. Tell him, go back and read what he didn't write. Because he seemed not to understand what was written there. These are the problems. That eventually the little mouse gets a long tail. But let me move on. Because I don't want to dwindle there too long. The hospital going nowhere. That was not my statement. That was a statement of the Minister of VSR. Minister Otley of Public Health, Social Development and the Labour, VSR Omar Otley, said on Wednesday, about 2 weeks ago, at the press briefing that he is not satisfied with the pace of construction of the new St. Maarten General Hospital, and he will not be satisfied until there are 100 workers on the project. Minister, please don't hold your breath. You'll die. I passed there a few times since this statement was made, and I counted about 10 to 12 people on location. That's what I counted. No more. It was first 3, 4. Now we're up to 10, 12. 100? That ain't gonna happen. Unless they're offering them free money. And everybody will come stand up there so they can take a picture and say, look, we got 100 now. It ain't gonna happen. No, no in the future. Our hospital is in serious trouble, and we need to deal with this legally now. Minister, you gotta start holding people accountable. Because at the end of the day, the grant that they got through the trust fund is government money. Because the trust fund is managing the St. Maarten government's money that was made available to them by the Netherlands. It's St. Maarten money. That's one. 2, the SZV, for whom you are responsible politically, put a lot of money in there. The APS, that the Prime Minister is responsible for, I believe, also put money in there. So you all have a right to now ask for financial review by calling in the companies I just mentioned and asking them to demand a financial review of where this project is and where it's planning to go and a proper time span. Because if you don't have that, this is going to become another fiasco in the coming year. So again, I think we need a better grip on what's happening at the hospital. And when we have it, Minister, I am not asking you to publish financial figures and strategies. There's no competition though, because you know, when we ask that for Taylor, they say, oh God, no, you can't do that. Because then Flo will see what we planning and our strategy is exposed. Well, there's no exposure at the hospital because there's no second hospital. The same as the airport, there's no second airport. So we should be able to see what's really happening. But we are not. We are kept in the dark. At the airport, they just put a whole new CFO because we are not worthy of a CFO in St. Maarten. But you are qualified, they said. You remember that stupid slogan? Because they have destroyed more locals in this governing period than they have appointed. All the big positions, all government-owned companies, look at it carefully. Look at it carefully. Because some of it backfired, they got themselves in trouble. But if it was up to them, they'd have appointed foreigners across the board. I don't know why. Ask them. Because I ain't sitting there. But again, we need to understand truly what's happening what's really happening at the hospital. He said, we have created ways in the ministry's rapid payment procedures that would help expedite permits and expedite projects of national interest. I must say, the airport has taken full advantage of this, but the airport received this full cooperation from the ministry because they have done what they needed to do by exhausting all means to hire locally. Until Finzo does this, we will be a bit reluctant to grant these permits because I need to know that they are exhausting their means to hire locally. So the minister himself realizes clearly that locals ain't getting a job. All they want is permits to bring in their compadres from wherever they're coming from. This is the problem with these big projects. We still have a big issue. The minister said at one time they had 15 workers and now we are at 43, but he is not happy until they get to 100. Well, I haven't seen 43 there. I've looked a few times. Maybe some of them were hiding from the hot sun on the side, so when you're driving across and you stop and count, you can't see those that are hiding against the wall because it was too hot. So they took a break from working. It is part of what it is. So we have the IPKO meeting coming this week. So I think on Friday, a delegation will be leaving to the Netherlands and they will have some chats about IPKO in Holland. And there are a few things that I called one of the members that is traveling, and he gave me an agenda of some of the matters that I believe we can talk about today. If you can recall, some time back I spoke about the data protection law, the consensus law, and I was always against it, and I am still against it. I have not changed that position. I believe that we can take care of our own data. I don't see why we have to give our national data to some people that are going to manage it for us regionally. The Dutch don't give me their data for me to manage it. I don't have access to their data, but I'm going to give them access to my data. So they can come down here and accuse everybody of some stupidity again. We got to be insane. I have spoken to the Minister of Justice about this, and it didn't go no place. I've spoken to some members of the coalition about it, and they were a little more open. And thank God, at IPKO, the data protection as a consensus kingdom law is going to be discussed. Because there's going to be a presentation given as to why they are proposing to make it a kingdom law. You see, if they throw the Netherlands out of the law, and it was in a mutual consensus law between Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Maarten, that would have been a totally different discussion. Does this have to do with trust? Yes, it does. We are not equal. Why am I going to put myself once again, by law, in a compromising position? That I have to go and beg the Netherlands to get out of a law that they have no call being in, because they're not one of the stakeholders. The only thing they want is to get the information, not to share with us. They're not sharing their information with us. Don't fool yourself. Please don't fool yourself with that. So I hope that the three countries that are going to IPKO can come together and come with a norm of stopping with the signing of kingdom laws. Kingdom laws, in my opinion, and in the opinion of some other people, is the latest form of recolonization. And we got to get rid of that. We speak of all kind of things of being an autonomous state, and some of us even looking forward to independence, including me, but with a path towards independence, with some dates set on when we should meet certain platforms, so that we know what we can become in this country once we can achieve financial independence first, pay for our bills, have proper people educated additionally to what we have, and put them to help carry this country to where it needs to go. If that is our goal, as country and as people, then why are we signing into kingdom laws that we will never be able to get out of, and they will procrastinate in blocking all these things? So again, I do believe we need to do it that way. Another point on the agenda will be slavery. What next? So now that they have apologized, at IPKO they're going to discuss what they believe should happen next. And we're talking about the reparations. And I personally hope that if the topic of reparation comes up, that we discuss how we can deal with bringing the country's people out of poverty by executing the following things I believe we can. A sustainable food chain by a full investment in agriculture and fisheries. So if you're going to give money to the country, then let's put that money to use in certain areas where we are sure that we can make a difference in this country. We have spoken about agriculture and fisheries so long, but we have never done it the way it can be done and should have been done. Maybe when you make money available, that should be one of the first things you should look at in seeing how you can do it. Renewable energy, and not just in connection with the SDGs, but more in the sense of putting money in people's pocket. And we can do this through, for example, windmills, solar power. While solar power is the most popular one, windmill power, so turbine, the wind turbine power, is better because it leaves off less CO2 gases and thus helps climate change better. That's just a technical piece that is important, but it is a little more expensive to put up those big turbines. But can you imagine yourself that on the eastern coast of St. Maarten, be it in our waters or be it in the backlands from Guana Bay to Point Blanche, that we put 5 such turbines of 3 megawatt. That is 15 megawatt. That is close to 1/3, in peak season, maybe 1/4 of GB's power. Do you know what impact that will have on the fuel clause? Do you know what impact that would have on the bills of the people? So if you want to talk about reparations, and if you are planning to put millions into this, then put it into those things in partnerships with GB, so that GB also starts to change from fossil fuel or LNG gas to renewable energies. A solar farm, be it on the sea, because you're talking nowadays about floating renewable energy, which would mean you put in floating farms in the sea, or you can put them in the pond, because that has been a discussion for a long time. Unless we are planning to clean up that pond and clean up the landfill, maybe we can use some of the water and use it for solar farms and gather some, because we have about 110,000 square meters of land there. Maybe we can use that, some of that, and put a solar farm there. Again, these are things that I hope are going to be discussed. Think about revamping our economy, but also, for example, creating a gas program platform for gas that is in the Saber Bank. We know it's there. We own 22%, the Netherlands owns 78%. So maybe we can make an agreement where we do an exploration, use some of the monies to do that, find a partner, so that we, in the next 5 years or 7 years, can start seeing a return on our asset called the Saber Bank that will make this country's people wealthier. Because the program, the ownership, is the people of St. Maarten, not only the government of St. Maarten, but the people of St. Maarten. So that the people of St. Maarten as shareholders also have a word and not just a vote when the election comes. You see, there are ways we can set this up. Those are known in Holland. we can carbon copy certain things and do these things. We should put a complete recycling system in place to ensure that we don't continue with the waste management we are doing right now. And realize that a waste-to-energy plant is not a desired something, but a needed something on a small island like St. Maarten. You know, these are things that we have to look at. I think we should even ask help financially by means of a grant and not reparations, hopefully, to assist in the redevelopment vision on sustainable housing, education, and healthcare. I won't touch healthcare today. I'll come back to it in a totally separate talk show. The cost of healthcare in Curaçao, Aruba, and St. Maarten is beyond its borders and is not sustainable anymore. Not at all. So we have to discuss and see how that's going to work. But before I do that, I want to speak to some of the stakeholders to understand their position in this whole aspect. So you realize I did not speak of repayment of the loans because I don't believe in that. I do believe that any loans that were given to us under duress situations, Hurricane Irma, the COVID pandemic, so the liquidity loans and the help after a hurricane, that those should be wiped off. Maybe that can be part of the discussion. Wipe those off. The man-made disasters where we took money and we didn't do what we had to do, and after that they put pressure on us, we should pay for them. We should pay for those. We want to be autonomous, then we should also be financially responsible. We should pay for those loans. So I don't believe we should wipe those loans off so that we can start borrowing for crazy again. I gave a listing of things I believe we should use the reparations money for, and I hope that Holland ties us to some of those things. That way, we have a chance to get on track and move forward with everybody as a stakeholder and not just some of us as a stakeholder. I really hope so. The financial inclusion in the kingdom, that's another topic that's going to be discussed at IPKO, and this is the issue of the banking that is plaguing all the islands where people can't get bank accounts for whatever reason. The bank feels it's a high risk. Or is that? Look, in Europe, the law is clear. Everybody has a right to basic banking. The last report we had here from the central bank, I believe it was 20-something% in St. Maarten, doesn't even have a bank account. 17% doesn't even bank. So they just move in money. And we want to go to a cashless society. It ain't gonna work. It can't work because you're excluding 25% of your people. So again, because of banking regulations here, it is that the banks that are established in St. Maarten tell you what their regulations are. And we accept those because then we believe we won't have a bank. And I disagree with that. There are other banks that can come here. There are even Dutch banks that can come here. As long as the regulations are equal to those of the Dutch Central Bank, why wouldn't they come? Those boys are businessmen. They ain't worried that. They are businessmen. But when we have an account in the Netherlands, they force you to shut it down when you live down here. We've had court cases about that. But again, it is something they're going to talk about. Let's see what comes out of it. The democratic deficit will also be discussed. I think that's just a waste of time. Aruba is going to come with a proposal. But as long as the Dutch are not willing to accept that when there's a dispute, there'll be an independent body that will give a final decision that's binding for all parties, you ain't going no place. We ain't going no place. The Dutch will not subject themselves to that. They have made that very clear. So, if that is the situation, then the other plausible solution is to change the charter to ensure that this can't happen. To remove, like how Prosecutorial has been stating, certain articles that allow disputes to come. That's how simple it is. So we then have to start looking at, okay, so we are in a kingdom where there's one sovereign country. Are we going to create more sovereign countries in that kingdom? So the sovereign country Aruba that handles its own foreign affairs, its own defense, or do we say, no, we don't want to do defense, but we'll do foreign affairs ourselves, we'll sign our own treaties? How does it work? Because constitutional, it must be able to work, otherwise it don't make no sense. So again, this democratic deficit, maybe either we just take it out and everybody go their own way. When there's a dispute, we do what we have to do. You go to the courts or whatever. Because even the court system, when time is ripe, they just tell you, no, that's not ours. We can't handle that. We don't have no laws for that. So again, it becomes a problem. And they're also going to be discussing the renewable energy in the context of the SDGs. And again, while the country recently signed this one, well, the Prime Minister had signed with the Minister Yeton on this. Where I am trying to figure out is, where are we going with these SDGs? Because the SDGs talk about climate change, renewable energy by 2030. Now, that's 7 years away, so that's not too far away. But concretely, what are we, beside solar and energy? Because that's the renewable energy they're talking about. They're not talking about waste energy, for example. That's supposed to be in this whole trust fund, waste management, etc. But there's no money for it. There's no money to do waste to energy. There's none. Means we're going to start looking for partnerships. So maybe if we're going to look for partnerships, find a partner in Holland. Let the Dutch government help you. Make it sustainable. It also helps with the grid of GB, because you'll be able to get 10 megawatt from there. Remember, I just spoke about 15 on wind. You get 10 from that, that's 25. That's 50% of your energy is now regulated outside of the power plants in KB. That's half of the fuel you will need. If right now we're paying $4 to $8 million a month on fuel, you're cutting that in half. Do you know what that means for people's bills? If you're serious about certain things and not just signing for the sake of political exposure, then I am more than willing to guide you and help you down that road. Because at least I know a little bit more about it than most of you all. But if we're not going to do that, then don't waste my time. Now I want to go into something that I know is going to give me a lot of phone calls after this show. And I put it in the segment of, did you know? A French number plate car rentals and Dutch to Maarten outnumbering Dutch plates from our rental companies. Why do I ask that question? Oh, very simple. Drive down to the airport. Look in the yards of the car rental companies lining that road. And you will realize how much French number plates are packed up in there. Now again, I have no issue with the Treaty of Concordia, free movement of goods and people. But if you have a French number plate, it means you're registered on the French side. That means you have a business license on the French side. That means those cars should be on the French side. And that the cars that you're renting at Juliana International and at the port in Point Blanche are Dutch number plate car rentals. But that's not the case. Again, I don't know what kind of agreements we have, but I just did a simple little arithmetic and I said, if we have 3,000 cars with French number plates, we are losing $1 million guilders a year on road tax. We are losing inspection fees to the tune of $60,000, $70,000. We are losing insurance premiums at the insurance companies. And we don't have the ability anymore to control the amount of cars on rental. Because we only know as government which permits we gave out, to whom we gave them out, for how many cars. So it would be an interesting review if the Minister of Tiat can tell the people of St. Maarten how many rental companies we have, how many cars they have, and then just take a wild guess on how many cars we have on island renting. Because again, I have no issue with nobody having a car rental license. But if we're going to have thousands of cars with French number plates on it, then those cars, either you increase the license of the car rental companies so that the French numbered cars can become Dutch numbered cars, or if people have licenses now, car rental licenses, that they can go over and make an agreement with the people that need license fees, need licenses, so that those locals can get a little cut on the well too. Because remember, most of the people get a car rental license and they can't participate on the market anymore because of a few things. The road tax is a problem. The insurance for them becomes, because they're paying for everything. They're paying for everything while the others are not paying for everything all the time. Because road tax, they pay it once and they move on. We gotta even the playing field. That's all I'm saying. We gotta even the playing field. And again, we need to understand that majority of the cars are on the Dutch side and they put a strain on our infrastructure. We get nothing in return. Maybe it's time that the Phillipsburg administration and the Marigot administration come together and say, okay, how are we going to tackle this problem? And this can be the start of a great cooperation that can also eventually lend a hand to the import duties that both sides of the country can do, and then alleviate us with this horrible turnover tax that is, even to government standards, 10% and not 5%. Check the fuel that it is put there. 5% here, turnover tax, and then a little lower down, another 5% turnover tax. That's 10%, people. That's not 5% anymore. Yes, turnover tax is 5%, but the end result for us, for gasoline alone already, and diesel is 10%. So again, maybe we need to find a way on how we're going to do this. But I don't believe that it was ever the intention that we would allow rental companies on the Dutch side to supplement their fleet of vehicles with French number plated rentals. I don't believe that was ever the intention when we have these discussions. And I think this needs to be reviewed and this needs to be regulated, that the country gets its fair share. That's all it is. I don't have a problem with people doing business, but the country got to get its fair share too. We can't continue milking the cow. The cow ain't gonna more milk. So it's time to start feeding the cow again. And feed him good hay. Not dry hay. Good hay. Strong. So I hope that we understand this. This is something I believe is the right way to do it. This is something that you will find back in the way we will be doing business when elected. Now, there was a publication sometime back there in the newspaper. I believe it was on the 19th of May. And part of it is in the newspaper of today, of May 22nd, but on May 19th, there was a publication of the Council of Law Enforcement, the report 2022. And there were some highlights of things we accomplished, some bottlenecks, and some serious problems were presented in that report. And one of those let me rephrase. One of the serious issues we had was the capacity issue in the justice system on Maarten. It runs like a red line throughout nearly all the different departments, but in particular, the national detectives. I believe it was how you call those people there now? No, let me keep it the national detectives because I can remember that one clearly. The problem is this. The shortage also of cell capacity was a serious concern in the report, and naturally this has kept the public prosecutors from putting 200 plus people in jail in 2022. So maybe to free it up, they send 8 of them now to Holland that have long sentences so they can get cells to put people in jail that they believe deserve to be in jail. Another bottleneck was that, and it keeps coming up in their reviews and it's also in the report now, is the structure and the organization of public financing. So public financing, so government monies for the justice system. The council questions whether the government even understands and comprehends the unique position of the judicial chain in certain parts of the government. The fundamentally different starting points from which the judicial system operates requires essentially a different approach, including in terms of payments. So the justice system have to do things very fast, so they believe they should mandate direct payment options to certain department heads, maybe like the prison, I don't know, corp chef, police force, that they have access to monies and they can do certain things more directly, because waiting on the red tape bureaucracy of government stagnates the proper functioning of the justice chain, and I can support that. The problem is right now I think they have $5,000 maximum that the chief of police can sign for. After that he gotta go look for the minister. You don't run a police force like that, but that is because we don't trust them. That's the reason they put $5,000 for an SG or a chief of police. It's ridiculous. You believe the people that run the tourism office, you can mandate them to $5,000? The people have things to do. You approve a budget. As long as they stay within that budget. If they do strange things, lock them up. But stop this thing about, I trust you, so I only gave $5,000. I mean, today, we go through all kind of things, everybody signs it off, and then they still accuse you. Oh, you do it wrong. But the governor and everybody else sign it off, but you still do it wrong. You're the one who will give the contract. You know, listen, if they want to come for you, they can come for you. But we need to stop this procrastination of people are not professional enough to do certain things. And the Council of Law Enforcement is stating that specifically in the judicial thing. Some overreaching or overarching themes were, for example, on one hand, St. Maarten is in a very difficult financial position right now. And on the other hand, in the country packages, it's telling us what all we have to do for the enforcement of the rule of law. They are opposing each other completely. Because I don't have the money, but you're telling me I must do A, B, C, D. And then we beat up on the minister when the minister don't make certain payments. But if you don't have the money, because you didn't budget correctly. And the problem is that because of that, the inclusion of criminal enforcement of the rule of law is very often not done. Because they don't have the money to do it. They don't have the people to do it. They don't have the material to do it. How often you hear the police saying, we don't have cars, we don't have manpower. Yet, I got to do it because that's the agreement the government signed to in the country packages. So the council is saying it's a problem. We need to accept that it's a problem. Also, the council is stating, and this one I found very interesting, that there's an imbalance between the investments in the inter-insular organizations on the one hand and the lagging on non-associated investments in local judicial services on the other. The lagging behind of investments in local organizations by the government, and in particular in the preconditions needed to carry out tasks, has been lagging behind for years, creating a waterbed effect. Now, the inter-island investments that they are talking about here is what the Dutch are doing in the prosecutor's office, in the RST, in the Coast Guard, in the courts. That's what they're talking about. Every year, 25 million euros goes in to a lot of these things, especially in the OM RST, to make sure that the investigations can go right and what all they can do. But the governments themselves are not upgrading the prison. The government is not upgrading the immigration department. The government is not upgrading the police department. So they can't do much together, because every time those that have a lot of money come down here to do certain things, the waterbed, everything going up and down because nobody got tools to work along. So, in closing, the council said, and I will just read this one because I found it quite interesting, the strengthening of the rule of law requires, among other things, strengthening of the criminal enforcement of the rule of law. So you gotta, if you want this thing to work, you gotta prosecute people, you gotta lock them up. This can only be achieved with the necessary attention and investment in this. So build your prison, fix your police force, fix the immigration. In light of the increasing complexity, changing and often cross-border crime, because they always come to the cross-border crime to justify why we are not functioning properly and why they must be here. That's why the cross-border crime is here. It can be seen that the pressure on the judicial organizations in Sint Maarten is increasing due to the partial or total lack of essential preconditions such as financial, personnel, and material capacity required for the execution of the task. Let me read that piece again and take it from the pressure on the judicial organizations in Sint Maarten is increasing due to the partial or total lack of essential preconditions such as finance, personnel, and material capacity required for the execution of the task. Although, listen carefully here, because the government ain't doing nothing they're saying. Although all justice personnel are committed on a daily basis, the lack of the necessary investment hinders the professionalization of various organizations. So the police are trying, the people in the prison are trying, immigration is trying, customs, court, everybody trying. But because they don't have the material to do their job, they can't do it the right way. That's what they're saying here. Government has failed and is continuing to fail. This is what they're saying in this report. And don't get mad with me. I'm just reading what they wrote. This is their conclusion. If Sint Maarten wishes to have a professional judicial chain and thus law enforcement that can combat crime together with other relevant partners, substantial investment must be made in this regard. If this does not happen, it will be at the expense of the effectiveness of law enforcement, and with that, the security of Sint Maarten will be compromised. I am not saying this. The Council of Law Enforcement is stating this in their 2022 report that came out May 19th, 2023. Government, when it comes to this matter, where they could assist the local judicial chain instead of only the prosecutor's office, the RST, the KMAT, the Coast Guard, and the other courts with financing. So I am amazed though. I am amazed at their conclusion, because there was not one solid proposal made in, for example, telling the Dutch government, listen carefully, people. And the CFT can help with this, because they know the situation of this country. Holland, you're going to have to take some of that 25 million euro you're dumping by the OM and by the RST and by the courts and by Coast Guard, and maybe start helping build the police force back up with material and capacity, the Lance Recherche with capacity, material, the prison with financing. You sign the UNEPs, now put the money. Don't expect St. Maarten to be able to dish out $40 million to help build that prison. They don't have it. But by not helping us, you're clearing the path to take it over. And that should not happen. And that's what we should guard against. And that's why I loved Minister Sylvania in Curacao when the Dutch kept screaming, oh, we have Russian involvement in the online gambling and blah, blah, blah. For God's sakes, people in Holland, the Russians control the gas in Holland. Gazprom sends 30 million every day, according to me, to Russia. So please, stop talking your nonsense about the Russians got online gambling. Who owns the Zuidas in Amsterdam? The Russians do. Why don't throw them out? Why don't stop the business there? Why are you coming down here with this nonsense? That's why I like how Sylvania said it. You have nothing to say about how we put our laws together. And that is correct. And that's why the role of the governor should start to be questioned now with enactment of laws. They don't have nothing to enact. We are autonomous. They have nothing to enact. So please understand where I want to go with some of these things, because it is absurd the way we behave sometimes. But let me close today, because it has been an interesting day for me already, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of phone calls because I see them coming in on my phone here, but they're just smiling. Let me once again tell all the seniors in St. Maarten and anybody else who feels they need a voice. I, Claudius Anthony Bancamper, a.k.a. Bunks, is here to be your voice. I cannot solve everything with my talk show. I cannot solve everything with some of the people I work with on the outside, but I do believe that I can give it the best that I have and try to make a difference in your lives. Since I got into Parliament, I started working and doing things very specifically with seniors, with tax reform, with animal cruelty. And I don't need to sit down and give you a listing of what all I have achieved. My record speaks for itself. I will be back in Parliament. Whenever we have that election, I'll be back. But in the meantime, my number is 520-1188. Please feel free to call me when you have an issue that you believe I should bring to the front and discuss it and have people help you where you deserve the help. I believe also that the report of the Council for Law Enforcement sometimes make me wonder if they themselves really grasp the issue at hand, that without proper funding, the enforcement of the rule of law will not happen. We don't have the money, and if they suggest we take it from another budget post, since we don't seem to understand the importance, then tell the CFT of BZK to send down the instruction to us. Let them show us where we should take the money from, because they collectively have been able to impoverish the best islands over the past 13 years. Tell them how we autonomous countries should handle the enforcement of the rule of law by taking money from education, health, because those are the two big budget posts beside law enforcement itself that govern the budget of country St. Maarten. Please share my podcast and also like and subscribe to my YouTube page. I wish all of you a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. Enjoy it. The sun is shining today. So let's go out, let's have a great time, and let's make country St. Maarten what it was once again. Thank you all. Bunks out. Take care of yourself.